Hi, today we're going to go over composition. From Read This If You Want to Take Great Photos by Henry Carroll. Composition. You'll see that taking great pictures is less about technical know-how and much more about mastering that most valuable piece of kit, your eyes. So what my goal in this course is that you work on developing your eye and the way of seeing. Here we're looking at Ansel Adams' 1927 monolith, the face of Half Dome at Yosemite National Park. And think about how he went about his photographs. So here's a quote: "You don't make a photograph, you make it. You make it by analyzing, you make it by looking, and by planning." Think of composition as the foundation of your image, and not just like those of a building foundation. They need to be strong. So you have to have a great foundation. You have to have the basics under your belt, just like we're building a structure. So you have your base of your foundation isn't built on sand, but on concrete moorings and cement. So think of your foundation as composition, which needs to be strong in order to hold the building up. And when we look at this photo, we're going to be looking for leading lines. Here we're looking at Henri Cartier-Bressant's photograph. And what is the first thing that you see in this photograph from 1932? So you can see the strong lines and dynamic lines or diagonals created by the stair railing. Now, Henri Cartier-Bresson stood at this place and he waited for someone to come by. It wasn't an accident that he took this photo. He stood there and he waited. Using leading lines gives your composition structure and draws the viewer to key elements. Here, we're looking at horizontal picture or landscape format, which encourages your eye to move from side to side. Vertical pictures or portrait format make them move up and down. So we can see in this photographs of the rabbis, the movement that's occurred in this Mark Aslan photo from 1992. So this strong movement that we see created by this arrow and in the movement of how these men are standing and hunching over. Think inside the box. I know everybody always says think outside the box, but in this case, we want to think inside the box. Framing draws attention to a particular part of your composition. Here we can see this person jumping over the hula hoop and he's framed by the hula hoop. So thinking inside the box. Here we're looking at Burning Man Festival by Cristina Garcia Rodeo in 1999. It's especially handy if you're shooting a busy scene. So here, there's a lot of things going on, but by creating that hula hoop, we're able to narrow down the focus for our viewer. Foreground interest. So here we're looking at shipbreaking number 31, and we're looking at the foreground interest. The foreground interest offers the viewer a stepping stone into your image and heightens its sense of depth. So if the image in the foreground wasn't there, would this photograph be as interesting? Get close and then get closer. Here we're looking at Martin Parr's photograph from 1997 in Spain. And you can see when you block your view and get even closer, how dynamic the image becomes. Very often, nothing kills an image more than keeping your distance. Symmetry. Think of it in terms of an ink block, where you have ink and you fold a piece of paper in half. It's the equal on both sides. Symmetry isn't simply a case of composing your image like an ink blot, but about creating an overall sense of harmony and balance. So I know we said think of it as an ink blot, but even more so, it's primal instinct. So here we see this photograph and it looks very symmetrical. It doesn't have to be perfectly symmetrical, but when we start to diagram it, we can see how symmetrical it is. Symmetry isn't simply a case of posing an image like an ink blot, but about catering an overall sense of harmony and balance, as we can see in Above the City in 2010. Be offish. Composition, the rules of third. So here you divide the subject equally into 3 horizontal sections and 3 vertical sections with a point of interest at the intersecting line. So that happens to be in the back of that woman. If you don't want to center your subject, the rule of thirds help maintain balance. Make every inch count. That we can see in Lars 1997, 42nd Street and 8th Avenue. Every component is activated. We have a foreground, a middle ground, and a background. Every inch counts. When composing your image, avoid passive areas that don't add much. So everything is important in the image. Nothing is just passive. Visual weight, reducing it down to its basic essential elements. Don't see the world as it is, see it as a photographer or as a photograph. Here we're looking at 1975 Lewis's photo, West Wall Business Center or Business Systems in Costa Mesa. Visual weight. Once you learn the rules, then you throw the book out the window and you can break the rules. So here we're looking at a picture of Francis Bacon at Primrose Hill by Bill Branton in 1963. And you're like, well, it's a really great photo, but it's breaking the rules. It's asymmetrical, there's no visual weight. He's against a dark background and a dark hill, but it makes sense. A good photographer conforms to the rules. Great photographers break the rules.